The women had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" They have a situation that's too big for them. It's a circumstance that just has bogged them down. It's an obstacle that stands in their way. It's a big deal. It really is. And it occupies their conversation. It's a good question with no good answers. But, however, that being said, they're still on their way to anoint the body of Jesus. They're still on their way to Jesus. Now, is that a case of just raw determination that drives them? Is that a resilient faith that moves them steadily along? Is that an unconditional love and devotion that just draws them? I can't say. We can't get into their heads. I can't know the deep motives of their hearts. All we can say is they're still on their way to Jesus. They're still on their way. They're affected. They're troubled by these things, that stone. They're full of questions that don't have good answers. For 3 days now, they've lived in disappointment and doubt and grief. But that has not changed the ultimate course of their lives. They're still on the way to Jesus. They had been saying, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" But Mark says when they saw the stone, when they looked up, they saw that the stone had already been rolled back. Go figure. They don't have a clue who moved it. They don't have an idea as to how that thing might have gotten moved. But that's not the issue anymore. It's no longer a problem. And they enter a tomb, and a man there in a white robe, an angel, a messenger of God, speaks to them, and that messenger delivers the Easter gospel. It's the message of God to these women. Notice that the message is not an answer to the question that they have been asking about how to deal with situations and fix circumstances and remove obstacles. His message is not about the stone, who moved it or how it got moved. That wasn't the point. That wasn't the purpose of their going there in the first place. That's not why they came. The stone, as problematic as it had been, was only a situation, just a circumstance, and an obstacle. They had been saying, "Who's going to move the stone?" In essence, the messenger is saying, it's not about the stone, it's about the risen Christ. And I hope the Easter message spoken to these women will speak to you in your situation or circumstance as you face an obstacle. And I hope also that that same message will speak to us together as a church, and particularly apropos, I believe, during this time of transition, which is always a difficult time in any church. Seems like there's a gob of situations and circumstances and obstacles. Listen to that message. It seems to be in 3 parts. The first thing the angel says is, "Do not be alarmed." Well, they were, but do not be alarmed. And Mark uses that only 3 times in his gospel. And in the original language, it doesn't refer so much to outward fear, but it has to do more with an inward distress, anxiety. Do not be alarmed. Do not be anxious. It's exactly what Jesus said to his disciples just before he left them when he says, "My peace I give you. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Don't let them be afraid. Don't be alarmed. Now, I know that that's easily said. We can toss that around to each other too easily. Don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. And we're talking about real issues. And somebody said, no big deal, don't sweat it, and you'd like to just about slap them. But keep in mind who is saying this. It's the messenger of God to these women. And he says it to us, don't be alarmed. The next part of the message may sound a little strange because he says, you are looking for Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. Had they been teenagers, I think they would have said, duh. Of course, that's who we're looking for. Are you kidding? What kind of message is that? You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. But I think in some sense Jesus is saying to them, I know that you're looking for this Jesus who was crucified. I understand what you're looking for. And I think it might even come as a bit of an acknowledgement of their devotion and love for this one that they are coming, whose body they come to anoint. I understand. It's wonderful to know in the situation and the circumstance and in front of the obstacle that God knows. And God understands very really the raw realities of our experience. He sees and he knows the deep intentions and motivations and desires of our hearts. I know. I understand. But there's a bit of a corrective in that too. It seems that he's saying, you're looking for the Nazarite. You're looking for the human Jesus who was crucified. You've come to anoint the dead body. The Jesus you are looking for here is a dead, would have been Messiah. And then the tone and the topic changes, and it absolutely changes everything. And it brings an unpredictable reversal to the lives of the women, results in a complete redirection in their search for Jesus. He says, Jesus has been raised. He's not here. Look, see, he's not here. He's been raised, he's not here. Rather, he is going ahead of you. That's where you'll find him. Look for Jesus there. The risen Christ, not the dead human. The risen Christ is the Jesus you should be looking for. Your search must no longer be for a crucified body lying in a tomb. You won't find him by looking back there. He's not here. Your search must be for the risen Christ who goes ahead of you. That's where you'll find him, alive, active, a living reality with you in Galilee, in the course of your life, in Warren, or Union, or Waldoboro, or Thomaston, Rockland, or whatever borough or burg you live in. That's the Jesus that we must be looking for. The message of Easter was to those women then, and I believe it is to you, to me, to us today. And it's not about big stones blocking the way. It is rather about the living, risen Christ opening the way. Don't let your life be directed, diverted, and ordered by all sorts of unpreventable situations and uncontrollable circumstances, unchangeable obstacles. Let the presence of the living Christ who goes before you bring newness, new direction, revitalization into the ultimate course of your life and our lives together. Someone put it this way: if in God's power the powers of death can be overthrown, what other kinds of powers can be overthrown? There is no helplessness so complete or final that God cannot effect an impossible, unpredictable, reversible change. And that's the message of Easter. Because he lives. We can get all bogged down in our situations, circumstances, and obstacles and miss the reality of the living Christ in our lives, who was already way ahead of us. He's gone before us. Hear the Easter gospel. Do not be alarmed. Jesus has been raised from the dead, and he is going ahead of us. That's the Jesus we must all be looking for. Amen.